In this video, I will be working through the tools and properties related to pressure-filled garments. When I'm referring to pressure-filled garments, I'm thinking of garments like down-filled jackets and down-filled vests. To get started, I need you to open file 024, pressure-filled garments. And you'll see here I've got a gentleman wearing a bomber jacket that we will add some channels to and then apply pressure to. And you'll also see this sad little deflated soccer ball, which we will inflate, hopefully. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my Edit Pattern tool, and I'm going to grab all of the pattern pieces related to my soccer ball to begin with. And the reason I'm grabbing these pattern pieces is because pressure, okay, if I scroll to the top of my property editor, you'll see pressure is an element of my pattern pieces, okay? Or it's a property of my pattern pieces, I should say. And so again, pressure you'll find under simulation properties. And I'll go ahead and jack this up to maybe something like 50. And I will go ahead and simulate. And you'll see pressure, again, coming from the center of the ball is being applied forward. And my ball is beginning to float up in the air. But you'll also see, if I zoom in a little bit, that the ball is not fully deflated or inflated. There are still some dimples, and so I can try to jack that up a little bit, but you're going to see that nothing really changes. And generally, depending on what number I'm on, the ball will float for a moment, and then as I increase the pressure, it falls. Okay, so I'm going to I'm going to turn off my simulation, and then I just want to talk a little bit about pressure once more. So pressure is not only the amount of force being applied, and force again is over here under pressure, it's also the strength of the fabric. And so I can increase the pressure, and at a certain point the fabric won't be able to contain that much pressure, and it will either fall to the ground if it's floating, or you'll see that it no longer seems to inflate, or it may even start to look worse. And so to test this, what I can do is right click on the ball while it's selected and come up to this option for strengthen. And that will allow me to test this with a stronger fabric, or the idea of a stronger fabric. And so remember, when I inflated this the first time and got a fairly good result, I was at about 50. 64 didn't make any real difference, but I'll leave it at 64 now that I've strengthened it. And if I go ahead and simulate, you'll see that the ball fills out and it rises up a little bit because, again, it's looking more and more like a ball. And I can increase the pressure a little bit more. Okay, and you'll see some of those dimples are filling in. All right, I'm going to go ahead and right click again, unstrengthen, and I will also turn off simulation. Okay, and at this point I'll hit my 2 key, go ahead and center on my avatar once more. And actually I've done that, but what I'm going to do is focus on my 2D window for the time being. And if I want to apply pressure to my jacket, I need to come over again to the pattern pieces, because one more time, pressure is a property of the pattern pieces. All right. And so to work through this, I'm going to work with the front of the garment and the arms. So I'll be working with these 4 pieces. And so I just want to be really purposeful as I select them, just to make sure that I'm not accidentally grabbing the cuffs or the neck or the, I believe this is a zipper. Whatever the case may be, again, just make sure you're utilizing the pattern pieces. Now, I could go ahead and just apply pressure to this, but it's not actually going to do anything because I only have the front of the jacket, okay? When we think of something that is filled with down or polyester fill, there's a front fabric and then there's a lining fabric, and I'll need that. Before I get to that, though, I need to go ahead and apply the internal lines that will form the seams that create those channels. And so, again, we used internal lines yesterday. I will go back to my internal line tools. Again, you've got a variety of shapes, but in this case, I want my internal polygon line. And to start off with, I can simply come in and just click some lines. Okay, remember, when you want to create an open segment that is, again, it's not closed, I'm not coming back to my starting point. To close this, I just need to hit enter. And that is going to take a moment. And once that's completed, I can also come in and try to create some channels that are a little bit more typical. If I wanted to kind of draw the start of maybe some diamonds. Okay. I'm going to stop there just for the sake of time on this video and hit enter. Okay. So the arms are not pretty, but that's what they are. I'm going to go ahead and keep those for now. And then I'm going to come over to the right and left of the front. And I'm going to illustrate a different technique here. I'm going to grab my edit pattern tool and I'm going to select the right, well, whichever side this is, yep, the right. And then I'll hold shift and select the other side, which is the left. And then I'm going to right click. And you'll see this option here for distribute internal line between segment. Okay, and again, to access this, I need both sides selected. And you'll see that you get access to your number of offsets, which you have seen briefly in the past. And so I can go ahead and increase the number here. And so I've got my number of offsets. I've got some measurements related to that. But what you'll likely enjoy playing with a little bit more are these options down here. So straight line's not going to change because these are already straight lines, so I'll uncheck that. I can also play with perpendicular direction. I can also play with something called graduate segment lengths. And I actually prefer this one, so I'm going to leave these. All right. And so at this point, again, I have my internal lines that will be used to create the channels during the sewing process. Okay. But again, I need the front of my jacket and I need a lining. So I'm going to grab my transform pattern tool and I'm going to click on one, hold shift, click on the second, third, and fourth. Okay, again, I want to be really purposeful and make sure I don't accidentally click anything extra. And I will right click and you'll see that you have these options down here. There are several related to cloning, but the ones I want, I've got clone, layer clone under and layer clone over. Now this is already the front because it's already got fabric attached to it. It's green. You know, this has already sort of been designed, so I don't want to put something on top of this. So I'll go ahead and do layer clone under, and you'll see that this is attached because I've got this purple line following me around. So I'm just going to drop that as closely as I can. Okay, and now I've got the front and I have the lining. Now I want to do one more thing, but I'm actually going to go ahead and grab my dual view. Okay. And I'm going to click off of my jacket for a moment. And remember, you can actually look at your internal line. So I'll come over here and grab that. All right. And of course, you can see what that's going to look like with these very gnarly looking red lines all over the place. Okay. So it gives you a really clear sense of where these are all going to be placed. Okay. Again, like I said, my arms don't look great, but I'm going to live with it. And so I'll come back and turn these internal lines off. If I zoom in, okay, you can already see the sewing that's taking place here, okay? The only thing that's not taking place is the actual pressure. So I'm going to go ahead and grab all of my pattern pieces, okay? And I'm actually going to do this incorrectly the first time, so please, as I do this, already be thinking she's doing this wrong, okay? So I've grabbed all of my pattern pieces. I'm going to go ahead and apply some pressure. I'll go ahead and simulate. Keep an eye on your jacket. And as that simulates, okay, I'm getting this really, really overinflated looking jacket. It looks awful. It clearly looks incorrect. Okay, I'm going to give that a moment to finish draping, finish simulating, and then I'm going to step it back. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take this back to 0. I'm going to just plug in the number, and I'll turn simulation off. Okay. All right. And so I came in here and just very brazenly applied pressure to everything in the same way, and that's incorrect. We have the front facing and we have the lining pieces, and we actually want to treat those as opposites. And so to get a better result, I'm going to come back to the outer layer, and I'm going to go ahead and apply positive pressure. So I'll play with a number like 10. And again, if you think of the fill on the inside as my zero or my central point. Coming out, okay, or moving forward away from the body, that's where I'm going to want that forward motion, okay? So I'm going to want that on my outer layer. And again, that's why I'm going to have a positive pressure on these pieces. And then I'll come to the lining. And I'm going to want that to go in the opposite direction. So for pressure here, I'm going to go ahead and put in -10 and hit enter. Okay. At this point, I'll go ahead and simulate, and let's go ahead and take a look at what that is going to do. And I'll click off so I don't see all of this yellow. Okay, and you're going to see I'm getting a much more appropriate pressure-filled look. Okay, and I can zoom in more closely to this. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Now, the only other thing that's missing, and again, this is the kind of thing I want to point out to you because I really do want you to be looking at your garments very, very closely and looking for things that look wrong or don't look realistic. And the thing that's missing here is when you look at these seams on, again, a jacket, like a down-filled jacket or a down-filled vest, is you would actually see puckering, okay? And so let's go ahead and apply some puckering to these seams. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and reduce the size of my 3D window because I want to be able to easily see these puckering tools. And you'll see I have an edit puckering tool. And then I have, if you long press, you'll see that you have a segment puckering and a free puckering tool. Okay? And these are all actually segments. So I'm going to grab my segment puckering tool and I'll come over and just click. And as this happens, these red lines are going to turn purple. Okay, and while I have that first one on, it's active. Actually, I'm not 100% sure it's active. Let's try for a moment. I'm gonna go to my edit, and I'll click it, and I'll go ahead and go to placement and choose both sides. Okay, and actually I can already see that working here. Okay, perfect. So while this one, I'll come over and again grab my segment puckering tool, grab this one, turn on both sides, and you'll see this work its way forward because I still have simulation on. Okay, and I won't work through all of these and put you through the waiting, but what I want you to see here is if I zoom out, okay, and I'll make this larger so it's easier to see. Okay, you can see the difference here. Okay, this looks much more realistic and it's much more representational of what this would look like when it was sewn. Okay, now if I hadn't turned both sides on, I would have had puckering on one side. And if I didn't want it on that one side, you'll see you have this option to flip it. But again, in this case, I did want puckering on both sides, so I made sure to check that both side option. Okay, now this is looking pretty good. I'm going to turn off simulation because my computer is humming, and I'm going to try to make this look even better by grabbing my transform pattern tool. I'm going to select all of the pattern pieces related to my jacket, and I'm going to come over here to my simulation properties, and you're going to see my particle distance is set to 20. I'll go ahead and take that to 5, which would be more high res. Okay, I've changed that number. I'm going to go ahead and simulate. This is going to take a tiny bit longer, again, because the particle distance is so much smaller. And let's go ahead and take a look at these elements once I click off. Okay. And again, my jacket now is at a particle distance of 5, and my computer is running very, very slow because of it. But again, as I zoom out, okay, you'll see a difference here. Okay, and definitely having some issues with my machine running slow. I'll zoom back out, try not to go too fast. Okay, but hopefully you get the gist. And if you are having trouble seeing it on my screen, as you follow it along on your own, hopefully you're seeing the difference. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end this video here, and I'm going to continue to work on some other tools and tricks you can use to add a little more detail to your garments.